Nice hand by both players. Very technical hand, actually. So, yeah, very underrated hand. I would say this is one of the more impressive hands I've seen so far. So, we've got an open raise by Gandalf. Min raise, actually. Okay. 3-bet by the cutoff. I would have gone a little bit bigger, but it's absolutely fine. It's difficult, right? Now you're going to have to play a lot of hands against this smaller 3-bet size, but you're paying a lot of rake, and you're facing a tight range potentially. So I like the fact that Gandalf is aggressively 4-betting here, assuming obviously his hand makes any sense. Big 4-bet. Maybe would have 4-bet a little bit smaller, but it's fine. 9-7-3 is not the scariest board. So Gandalf has to be afraid of the cutoff, maybe having pocket nines or a flush draw or having slow played aces. But it's not a board that improves the cutoff player too much. So he goes with a small bet. If the board were a lot more scary, maybe he'd do something else, like a bigger bet or a check. But the board is really not that bad. It's not a great board for you, right? A lot of your overcards like ace queen, ace king miss, so it's not a great board, but it's not a terrible spot. The 8, however, does matter. I mean, pocket 8s is an unlikely but a possible hand. Jack 10 suited is possible, 7-8 is possible, 6-5 is possible. So Gandalf does not like this this card very much. And sure, maybe he has a hand like ace 10 of hearts, and now he has improved to a better, to a higher equity draw or a draw with more outs. But at the same time, it's not a great spot. So let's see if he goes for like a shove or a small bet or a check. Small bet. Okay. River King does matter. I could see Gandalf having 4-bet bluffed hand like King Jack of Hearts, and now he got there in the river. I could see him having a hand like Ace King to be bluffing perhaps, and now having a pair or even a hand like Pocket King. So definitely a decent card for him. Not an amazing card, but a decent card. Ships all in. That's probably going to be your most common sizing. And wow, okay. So, Gandalf open raised 6-7 suited, which is kind of loose, but absolutely fine. And he then 4-bet his hand, which is kind of unconventional. Most people tend to 4-bet high cards, like ace-queen here as a bluff, but 6-7 is it's a little bit more aggressive. And Chloe, whatever, let's call him Chloe. He called aces pre, so he probably thought, hey, my opponent is 4-betting aggressively, and if I shove, he'll just fold. Especially when we're 120 big blinds deep in tight spots like MP versus cutoff, I don't think his value range is very wide when I hold the 2 best cards in my hand. So I'm just going to call here and I'm going to let him bluff it off. So, and then he actually called down. I'll give Chloe a 10. I'm not saying you have to play your hand in this manner, but I think it was a great play. So I like his play a lot. As for Gandalf, I like the creativity. I like the fact that he kind of bluffed through. I think it's a great bluffing hand, but it's a little bit aggressive. I'll give him an 8 out of 10. Nice hand by both players. Very technical hand, actually. So, yeah, very underrated hand. I would say this is one of the more impressive hands I've seen so far. Probably the most impressive. Can you never study auto position play enough? Out position play is a lot more difficult than in position play generally. So, I mean, of course, playing is more important than studying overall. But yeah, studying it more definitely helps. The thing is, don't only study more, right? But study more efficiently as well. Don't just be proud of yourself if you study for 6 hours but don't learn anything. Look at your productivity. If you had a leak, if let's say there's a spot you've been in a few times and you had no idea what to do, and you look it up in Pio in a couple of hands, you see the same result every time, and you write it down and you memorize it. Now you've plugged a small leak. You've done something right. Just mindlessly going through poorly run sims. Maybe you spent 6 hours learning, but it doesn't necessarily make you a better player, right? It's the same as going to the gym. Once you swipe your gym card, it doesn't mean that you're not going to have a six-pack. No, you're still going to have to work out hard. Just because you're technically at the gym doesn't mean you're going to have great gains. Just because you're technically studying doesn't mean you're going to be a much better player. So you have to be effective and efficient as well. Open raise by the button, eventually. I like this Sunny avatar. I like the 225 open raise sizing as well. Especially at lower stakes, it makes a lot of sense. Aquarius 3 to 10 big blinds, which is a fine raise size. Something in that neighborhood makes a lot of sense. So he actually goes for a big bet here, which is a little bit less common. Some people might bet big on a more connected board like King Jack 8. King 9-6, most people at least bet smaller, but I think this is a fine bet size to incorporate into your strategy. RG is not going to do a whole lot of raising, right? The board it's kind of wet, but not super wet. And when facing a big bet here, especially being a little bit deeper, right, around 125 big blinds deep, you're not going to do a lot of raising on a king high board, which is going to be substantially better for the small blind. Okay, makes sense that Aquarius goes for a pretty big bet here, right? The board has not changed in the button's favor. So if he's happy to bet the flop with, let's say, a good king or better, he's still happy to bet. 6 should not really change anything. Maybe RG got stubborn with like a6 or 6-5. He cannot have a 6 and a flush draw. So if I were Aquarius and I had him like ace king, I would very often just continue betting. All in. And a call. Oh. So small blind has aces and he went for it, right? Hoping to get called by a king. You could maybe bet small on the flop. You could maybe check turn. You could check flop. You can even maybe check river, although not so much on the river. I can't really fault his play, right? So I'll give him an 8.5 out of 10. His play was good. Getting it in with aces. You can't always just fast play any good hand. You have to slow play sometimes and be deceptive. Pretend like you have a worse hand. But his play is good. The button, however, I like the pre-flop call. I like the flop call. I like the turn call. The river call, though, is a little bit ambitious, right? I mean, it's quite ambitious. What he's probably thinking is, okay, I block King Jack. If villain has Jack 10 of diamonds or Queen Jack of diamonds, he's not bluffing, so it doesn't matter. And, you know, I beat a lot of hands like Queen Jack got shots with hearts and 8-7, whatever. So I get what he's thinking, but this play is just too loose. He should just be folding the river. He should have maybe an occasional 6, as we said, but definitely pocket 9s, definitely some ace kings, king queens, maybe some lower kings. He can just have many better hands to be calling with. He does not need to call with this hand. Absolutely not. So I'll give the button a 4.5. Good pre-flop call, good flop turn call. River, I get what he's doing, but it's just unnecessary, right? Guys, again, these types of plays at low stakes don't generally make sense. People are, if anything, under bluffing rather than over bluffing. Do you like the flop sizing? I don't dislike it. It's probably not a play I would make myself very often, but I don't dislike it. As long as you balance this properly with the rest of your strategy, I think it can work out great. So 100 now once again. We've got 2.5x open raise, which is a sizing that I don't recommend. I think 2.2x or smaller is better. But under the right circumstances, it could make sense. So imagine the priest. Imagine the priest plays 99% of his hands. He doesn't give a shit, right? He's like, oh, 250, whatever. You know, I've got $100,000 in my bank account. Why would I give a fuck about 250 or 220 or $3? Well, if this guy doesn't change his ranges based on the sizing, right, you can go bigger and just raise a tight range and get a lot of value against him. Why not? But in theory, at least, going with a bit of a smaller sizing is at least what I prefer. Big blind squeeze or small blind squeezes here. A little bit too small for my liking. I'll go more around like 13. So I like the aggressive pre-flop squeeze, assuming the hand makes sense. I don't like the sizing too much. Now, I do like the fact that the MP player is 4-betting here. Calling is a bit awkward, right? Being 3-way out of position, being in the sandwich. If Monica were to bet and you're deep, you got a call here. Maybe priest ships behind you on the flop. Kind of awkward. So I like the fact that we're 4-betting aggressively here. However, the pre-flop sizing, again, is too large. You're kind of giving Monica an easy way out. Monica does call. I mean, it's not bad sizing necessarily. Sizing up a bit when deep does make sense. However, I think we pushed it a little bit too much as middle position. Jack 9-6 is a bit of an awkward board. I'm not sure if Get Crunk would 4-bet jacks here. I think a lot of players at 100 would just call there. But Monica would almost always have pocket jacks, right? And Monica is more likely to have pocket nines than Get Crunk. So Monica is also very likely to have hands like ace, queen of spades, let's say. So a board on which, let's call her she, a board on which she improves quite a bit. So when Get Crunk bets here, he's repping a lot of overpairs for sure. Call on the flop. Ace changes everything, right? Monica could have hit like top pair with a flush draw, like ace, queen of spades, or maybe ace, 10 of spades. Obviously, Get Crunk is going to have a lot of sets of aces here. And maybe he was 4-bet bluffing sometimes with hand like ace-queen, which now hits top pair. So I could see Get Crunk betting small again at a high frequency. But he decides to check. 8 should not really matter. Maybe Monica has 9-8 suited, maybe Queen 10 suited, but both are quite unlikely. So most likely she will just check. But not this time. So she's repping a hand like ace-king then, I guess. Maybe a hand like ace-jack suited. Maybe some type of slow play with jacks or nines. Okay, fair enough. Bit of a cooler right there. So Monica ends up squeezing. Again, sizing was too small, but I like the squeeze. I don't mind calling the 4-bet 200 big blinds deep, although it's going to be very awkward to play. On the flop, it's kind of close, but I do think we can end up calling. Well, turn we check full range, and on river, I'm fine with it. I'm fine with the all-in. So I'll give Monica an 8.5 out of 10. The play could have been a little bit sharper. You could have considered maybe a block on the river as well, but I'm perfectly fine with the play. Get Crunk, I like his line a lot. I like the 4-bet. I like the c-bet. I like the check on the turn sometimes, and obviously calling. But again, his line could be a little bit more sophisticated. So you see both good plays, so I'll give them both an 8.5 out of 10. Both are good plays, but the difference between playing this hand here, maybe at a higher stake, would be that the bet sizes could be a little bit sharper. This hand could even be checked behind on the flop if you wish to have a check back range. So, nice hand to both of you.